No. Okay. All right, everyone ready?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So now, first off is the identity politics critique. Identity and lived experiences are not relevant to fact and shouldn't matter to surroundings. Here, 16. If you want to fact that the color of skin is relevant to your identity is relevant, reality can be predicate, nobody, that's what it means. The nature of any good arguments, ability doesn't depend on who you are. Getting a handle of factors and requirements. As a black man, I know X, Y, and Z. The color of your skin isn't relevant information. We're talking about what's happening throughout the whole society. Your life experience is relevant. The fact that you might be is a problem. This isn't to say life experience is never relevant to a conversation, but a person's identity and life experience often aren't relevant to facts. I will explain why. I'm not trying to be offensive. Link, telling us we can't talk about fairness in debate space because we're white. Like the cross-sex link and the caucasity argument is identity politics and fundamentally bigoted. We'll defend it. Shapiro 18. Evil things are still evil and good things are still good. Even if I'm a white man, this is one of these identity politics points. It's terrible. My identity has nothing to do with what is right or wrong. This is what Western civilization used to be right. You and I can have a conversation about what's right and wrong, and this is the nature of human reason. I refuse to surrender the idea that I can't have a moral stance on issues that are concerned to society simply because of the color of my skin or nature of the gender. And any views that feels differently is sexist, racist, and bigoted. Internal link. Identity politics leads to class-based guilt. You cannot identify me as my group without simultaneously identifying me with everything my group done. In fact, the caucasity argument is solidifies this hard. Peterson 16. Because a group membership is the most important thing. If your group at some point in the past did something reprehensible, which of course every group has done, then you're de facto responsible. They bite into this so hard. They're saying that white people all throughout history have had power, so there's guilt that trying to erode white guilt is bad, that white people are guilty. In fact, they even say that we can't talk about fairness because of our Galileo 7 nights because we're white. Don't misunderstand what we're saying here. We're just saying that don't identify me as what my group did, in the past. I'm not them. Identify me as me. When you do that, you lead to class guilt. And the impact of that is class guilt justifies the use of violence against entire groups and leads to genocidal oppression. That's Peterson 16. Group identity in the Soviet state was viewed as a catastrophe, absolutely terrible, led to the notion of class guilt. They call them kulaks and they should be class guilt because they're successful. They define themselves as oppression that they killed all of them. Because of that, about 6 million Ukrainians started to death. The Soviets were big on collective guilt. And because of things you're like white privilege are variants of collective guilt. I pick your bloody identity and then I make you a guilty member of that category, and then you and the rest of the guilty members of that category are judged as a unit. It's absolutely murderous, and we've seen that many, many times. Additionally, just the anti-Semitism and eventual genocide that occurred in Nazi Germany was caused by identity politics and class-based guilt, the concept of Jew privilege. We've seen where this leads on the left and the right, and we must not go there. Therefore, the alternative is to abandon identity politics and regard people as individuals, to choose the heroic path and take responsibility for the burden of being. That's Peterson 17. The point of greatest suffering, the point of threats, transformation, symbolic gender words occupied with the individual is possible to transcend slavery, but simultaneous to avoid pitfalls of nihilism through the elevation and development of the individual, through the witness of every show the burden of the heroic path. It is indispensable that great must reduce suffering, the points of words law, but the horror of the authoritarian belief, the chaos of the cop state, the exit of the weakness, purpose of the individual's clearly worse. In fact, identity politics debunked itself and proven the alternative by discovering intersectionality. That's Peterson 17. Given that there's an infinite number of ways of interpreting the word, you can immediately point out there's an infinite number of dimensions, all people vary. Then you get intersectionality. If you're a black woman, you've got 2 dimensions of variation. What if you're gay and black and people? What if you're not very bright, gay and black people? What if you're ugly, not very bright, black people? You can keep playing that game in an infinite number of ways because there's an infinite number of ways to categorize things, as the postmodernists already pointed out. The intersectionalist theorists don't understand that the logical conclusion of intersectionality is individuality. The individual is the ultimate minority. That's exactly what the West discovered, and the intersectionalists will get there if they don't kill everyone first. So I just want to clarify, I'm not saying anything racist, I'm just simply saying we need to be individuals. Okay, because otherwise we have class guilt. Because we're white, we can't talk about things because we have to be held to what our ancestors did, which has no linkage to us, right? They just assume that we have privilege because other white people do. Now go on to framework. All right, so first on the interpretation, they argue that...
Open for cross?
Yeah.
The identity, how are we identity politics?
So, in the cross-examination, you said that we couldn't talk about how we feel excluded because we go against a topical graph because we're white males. It came out of nowhere, and then also the caucasity thing, saying that white people have been in power all the whole time, and so when they try and say they're not guilty, it's horrible.
Okay. So we're not an identity act. We don't say listen to me, listen to, Paula never said listen to Andrea.
But
I never said affirm my identity and Andrea's identity.
No, you're holding us to it. You're trapping us within it.
How? But we're telling you.
Because you're saying we can't talk about something because we're white.
I give you actually another question. I gave you things that you could read. Why didn't
What do you mean?
What's the terminal impact to feeling white guilt?
No, we're saying
I feel bad.
No, it's genocide. No, it's not. It's not that I feel bad.
To me, any hate group or anything is that
I
pointed
to 2 examples of this happening. One was Nazi Germany with the concept of Jew privilege. They assumed that every Jew had privilege because of phenomena happening in society, and the kulaks on both the left and the right.
Happened in
Yes. Identity politics and class guilt. All Jews are guilty. Jews run society. That's the same thing with white privilege. That's our argument. We're saying that all racism is bad. You said that we couldn't talk about something because we were white. It's not that we feel guilty. It's that you're trying to make us guilty, and that can result in policies justified because of that. For example, in South Africa.
What's wrong with making you feel guilty?
Well, okay,
What's
so
wrong with taking responsibility for what you did and
So,
instead of actually
there's two reasons.
making a change?
Okay, there's two reasons. One, that's not what I did. I'm not my ancestors. I don't have relation to that. I didn't do that. You're holding me guilty for something I didn't do. And two, it leads to genocide. I'm white. Yes, I am white. That doesn't mean that I'm responsible for everything that every white person ever did. There are white people in poverty. Does that make them, privileged or whatever?
You could have read a Cap K and made that argument. There's your ground argument.
You were criticizing Cap K. This only solidifies our Galloway 07 link that you made us concede the moral ground.
Thank you so much. I give you arguments that you could have read. Why didn't you read them?
Which ones? Well, there are two reasons. One was the moral ground argument. Two is we don't.
No, you said we had to take the moral ground, and yet you still said.
Which arguments are you referring to?
Bad.
What do you mean?
And you still you're still saying well, we had no ground except for the racism good thing, and yet you still went and said this.
Because the links
still said white guilt is bad. Stop
the links are different. I got you.
Blah, blah, blah.
Okay. The links.
How did you not,
I'm explaining that. The links.
That's your ground.
The links of no ground went to your constructive. The racism links about the identity politics came from your cross-X and your 2 and 1 and C. And we're not saying racism is good. We do not think racism is good. We think it's horrible. We think that attributing making everything any other white person has done to us, just consider us as white people and saying, oh, you're white, so that's racist in our opinion.
Let me ask a question then. Can you give me an equivalent of of the KKK, but for white people?
I don't. Well, just because the KKK exists,
cool.
that doesn't mean.
No, that's all I needed.
Yeah. Okay. I got a couple problems with this. I specifically told you, don't read racist shit.
Yeah. I just don't.
This argument is inherently just saying identity politics doesn't matter and is bad.
Well,
how is that okay?
Right, this is why I preface it with misunderstanding. So the argument was that intersectionality leads to individualism. We're one step closer. We just need to go the full way. Intersectionality isn't bad, but we need to consider everything.
I don't care. The actual evidence of this is racist. It's saying things that your identity doesn't matter and stuff like that.
Well, to facts, whether or not, for example, it's lived experience, not to facts. For example, what, me living in Arizona doesn't have anything to do with whether or not global warming actually exists. That's the argument there. That's just an overview.
But the way you're applying this argument and the way you're applying this evidence is basically saying them talking about their identity doesn't matter in terms of facts.
Well, no, the link was they were saying we can't talk about stuff because of our identity.
No. You're saying your identity is bad and you don't get to talk about it. But let me talk about my white identity because.
The link wasn't you talking about your identity as Latinas. That was just an overview tagline.
Yeah,
the link was
you're talking about you're saying first of all you're saying no, we're identity politics. You're saying no, we're
because
not identity
because of the
politics.
cross-sex.
Second, you're link turn. If anything, you're the one that's saying you're the one that's being running an identity politics with your white identity.
We're not advocating white identity. We don't want to talk about race. Your constructive didn't link. Your cross-sex talking about whiteness linked. We don't want to bring our identity into this.
They're Caucasians voting.
Right. This is why I preface this by saying, a lot of people misunderstand this critique. We're not trying to be any form of racism.
You're reading Ben Shapiro. What are you?
You're literally reading Ben Shapiro.
Yeah.
You know who he
is there anything racist in that card?
Oh my god.
Do you want to know who he is?
I know who Ben Shapiro is.
Let me
He's
just
not a racist. What are you talking about?
I don't think. Maybe he is. I'm not aware of anything he said that's racist.
Yeah, I don't know.
Then don't read it.
I don't know. What
Well, I don't know anything he said that's racist.
Racist is that
Racism is discrimination based on skin color. Nothing in our card does that. We say don't do that. Don't discriminate based telling me who can talk about what because we're white. That's discrimination.
He said we're not going to give you cookies now just because you're white.
No, you said you can't talk about this because you're white.
Read the card.
Not the 1AC. The
2AC.
Judge. No. I'm not.
Okay, well, I'll make a framework argument. The jurisdiction is a very important thing to pierce echo chambers. Judges should be unbiased because otherwise we reinforce echo chambers.
I said the debate should be on who debates the best, on which arguments do end up going through.
Right. Okay. If what we're saying is racist, argue it. Don't just say end the round.
Alex literally said, if you
I don't think this is racist.
But if you don't think that's racist.
Yes.
But you're white, so how can you tell me something that's racist against
That was
me?
super racist. Why does my skin color have to do with what's racist or not? Telling me I can't talk about racism because I'm white is racist.
If I say, hey, you're black, you're brown, I'm brown, that's not.
No, that's
my
not.
race is
No,
not racist.
that's not racist.
Me telling you you're white.
Telling me I can't talk about something because my race is racist.
I'm not having this conversation.
Okay, that's very. That's quite a debater strat.
I don't think the affirmative ever made a claim that you cannot talk about these things just because you're white. I think they said your viewpoint is filtered through privilege, right?
Yeah. We're just rejecting that. We're saying that that's class guilt. You're just assuming we have privilege.
That's how it is.
Well, you need to provide warrants for that.
No, I'm not sorry.
Like, we can't
You
have,
should be apologizing.
like, so, Judge,
Take responsibility.
Judge, a big problem is that there's a priori assumed truths in the debate space. We just assume things are true. Like, if I say that actually white privilege doesn't exist, you can't just vote me down because, oh, obviously it exists. Like, maybe it doesn't. Like, have epistemic humility. They need to argue that it does, and then we have a debate.
Dude, where's your humility? You say
What do you
have
mean?
humility, but for white people.
No, epistemic humility. Like, know that you might be wrong. Assume that the person
You
you're
might be
talking
wrong,
to.
That's why we're having this debate.
How
Yeah.
about you read all your cards before you read them in a debate round?
What do you mean?
We did read.
Like, read over your
We
cards.
read them. I've read them multiple times, many
The
times.
They're super racist.
I don't think they're racist. That's why I preempted it. Don't misunderstand it. I really don't think it's racist. And if it's racist, we can have a dialogue about it. Can you hand me my water, Winston?
Yeah.
We're not having this conversation.
I mean, if...
Look, I gave my paradigm at the very beginning.
Yeah.
I told you, do not read evidence that can, even the slightest, be misconstrued as racist, right? I don't
Yeah.
want to have this conversation. Does that make sense?
Well, how's that fair, though?
You're in a room.
Like, that
with
sounds
people
very
of color.
biased.
You have the audacity to stand up and no. You have the audacity to stand up here and tell me that my identity doesn't matter, but your white identity does.
No, in the
matter.
card it says,
And then you
in the
have
card
the
it says identity matters
No.
sometimes. It says identity does matter sometimes.
When does it
In
not
relevance
matter?
to facts.
When we're talking about facts, yeah, facts.
No, when does it not matter? Please.
When
tell
we're
me.
talking about facts. Okay, when we're talking about whether or not your model of debate is unfair, our skin color has nothing to do with that. That's a factual
What
argument.
about my skin color?
Your
What
skin
about
color
our
also
skin
doesn't
color?
have anything to do with whether or not what you're doing is unfair to us.
Yeah, it goes both ways.
Like, the link was, they...
I'm ending this. It's
No, like end it. Like I'm literally like I can't do this. Debate over. We're not.
So I tried to be very cautious. I said don't misunderstand it. I don't think this is racist.
look,
Trigger warning. I'm about to read something racist.
Well, if this is the debate space, like,
This is
ideas that are
This is
offensive,
the debate
like,
space.
in order...
You
Like,
might.
I get where you think you're going.
Look,
It's
yes.
not true about racism and stuff like that and like oppressive struggles. Does that make sense?
I understand
Isn't that what
the
debate's
world
for,
is
though?
racist and that I'm going to
Like-
I'm going to face racism. That does not justify you being
what-
Like, they
racist
read
to
a
us.
performance about how their lived experiences have been influenced by like racial structures.
yeah.
Why do you think it's a good idea to say this kind of shit?
Well, because the link wasn't that narrative. The link was them saying that we can't talk about fairness because we're white. That was the link.
That was the link.
Like, the factual question is whether or not it's fair, then they brought race in there. That's what the Harris 16s in the context of. Not like their lived experiences about Latinas.
Judge, this
Look
is
at the-
getting really close
Yeah.
to it being racist. Like,
What
and
I,
then you read this.
what I'm saying is, I just don't see how it's. I don't
Don't
see.
even bother. Like you're done.
I don't see how you can
Round is
have
over. You
integrity.
lost.
I'm
You
talking to the
lost.
judge. I don't see how you can have integrity as a judge to just have bias and say, well, I personally think you're wrong about this. Plenty of people agree with me about this. It's not like this is an unfamiliar opinion.
Yeah, white
Many people-
supremacists, dead ass.
Yeah,
like,
I'm not a white
the
supremacist.
KKK, people who like are like
Like,
yeah,
my
it's not
author-
fair that white people,
like, the author,
face
Peterson-
racism.
Why do you think like being endorsed by like white supremacists like Ben Shapiro or Jordan Peterson
Well,
is good?
well, see, this is
Like,
what
we're not-
okay, I can answer that. I can answer that. So, like, you can think racism, like, this is racist, and then they prove it. Like, we have cards of Jordan Peterson saying, I'm not racist, I'm not alt-right, I'm not
Yeah,
left
that's
right.
what
I
he
just
just
want
said.
individualism.
You're doing what he's doing.
I'm going to
That's
say,
literally what you're doing too. Just say,
there's
I'm not racist,
there's a lot
but
of
I think these
there are a lot of
don't
slanderous
think
articles
anyone is
online
racist.
saying that Ben Shapiro and Jordan Peterson are racist. We don't think they are. If he actually has said something pretty racist,
Ben
show us it.
Shapiro- Ben Shapiro was
But
the
we can't just
number one
assume that
most
it's wrong.
reading
If anything, that goes
person right.
completely against what postmodern academia is about right now, of deconstructing assumed narratives. That was actually in our framework. That literally, it said that they are confirming assumed narratives by calling us bigots just for having an opinion. They have to prove that we're being bigoted.
When did I call you a bigot?
I'm not having this argument.
You can end them around. You can
No,
end the
I'm
round.
not.
But I don't
No,
think you're being an
no,
appropriate
no.
judge at this point.
Stop. No,
I really
I
don't want, like, if this is the way you judge, this is the problem with the debate space. It's an echo chamber. Anything that's
Do you want
said,
to be reported to tab? Like, I'm
go
confused,
ahead.
like, what's going on?
Go ahead, report me to tell. I haven't done anything wrong. What you're doing is wrong, Judge. You're ending around because of your own political opinions. I said many times, I don't think this is racist.
said
You're just
before
saying,
Basic
I think it
human
is.
rights for
I-
people
I
of
d-
color is not.
I agree.
exclusive
Basic
anything.
human rights for everyone. That's my position.
For people of color.
Yes, and everyone else.
Everyone.
Basic human rights for people of color doesn't mean extra rights.
Don't talk to me. Don't say anything. Like this is over.
I just don't think reading arguments like this are like helpful
Well, I know what you think, but why does it matter what you think about our arguments? You're not in the round.
because it does actual violence to people. right? It does actual like psychic violence to people.
Psychological
When they think-
violence. What
That was
word?
one of the
When you read
terminal
arguments that say your identities don't matter, you cannot talk about your identities, especially in response to an affirmative that is predicated off of lived experience.
But how do you have jurisdiction to make that argument? They didn't read like a roll about it or anything. Like,
Yes, we did.
Look, I'm here as an educator, and when shit goes down in a classroom, I can intervene, right? When I think that the safety of students is like being compromised, then I have to intervene. Like,
Okay.
that's my job as an educator. That makes sense?
I understand that. My problem is that that's subjective, in my opinion. Like, plenty of people would not agree with you that we're causing violence to them. Like, it's the debate space. This is like free speech. You might be offended when you do
Yeah,
debate. That's
and we
what
read
debate
that.
is. You can't go into debate saying, I will not be offended. That's not how debate works.
Can I at least go into a debate knowing that I'm not going to face psychological violence and be yelled at for being drunk?
Well, it depends on how you define it. If you define it as someone disagreeing with you, no.
No, don't defend that. It depends how you define
It does
racism.
depend how you define
No,
it.
Not racism.
No.
We're not
Psychological
racist.
violence.
What have we said that's racist? I don't understand. You're the one
You're
saying because
telling
we're
us
white.
our identity.
Racist.
Like,
I'm
the judge
no,
is
no, no.
telling
I
you
was saying our
your
identity.
cards.
Our identity
Your cards are
doesn't
racist.
says our
Your cards
identity.
are from racist authors.
No, they're not.
You are making racist
They're not.
claims.
We have cards of them saying they're not racist, and why?
Okay.
Like,
yeah, okay, so whatever.
Not in this discussion right now.
okay.
I don't need to tell no white man why my identity matters.
See, that's racist. Why does it matter that I'm white?
No, shut the fuck up. I don't want to hear you.
Read your card before you actually read them.
He did multiple
Like,
times.
actually-
I've read it.
Like read the International Human Rights Act.
I've won on this occasion.
Slam the door. Okay. I got that all before because I anticipated that happening.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so he's good.
You guys talked to earlier
Yes.
about a
Yeah.
judge that kind of went
Yes,
down
and I talked to the judge, and I listened to what his explanation was, and I do think that you all have a legitimate gripe about the nature of him ending the debate in the middle. That said, I don't think you have a reason to overturn the decision, because it is a question of persuasive argument in front of that judge that ultimately lost you the debate, especially given the nature of the pre-round conversation about what was important to him in his philosophy. So I think, yeah, the judge should have let the debate play out, absolutely. But you all also definitely read arguments in front of him that were not going to be persuasive to him.
Well, yeah, well, we were really cautious about it, like, because we knew he says don't say anything racist. So I said like 7 times why this isn't racist, even though he might misunderstand it to be, you know. And then he just.
Well, I mean,
But he's
just
the ultimate decider.
I
It
think
was explained multiple times.
I think that's unfair though for him to intervene. He's not in the round, you know.
like I said, I think you were totally right that he overstepped a little bit by stopping the debate and deciding. But I also think it's incredibly obvious that regardless of how many ways you tried to couch this argument in front of that judge, the bar for the other team to respond to it was going to be so low that the argumentative content that you chose, the strategy that you chose for that judge and for his stated philosophy was a poor choice on your part that was going to lose you that debate either way.
Okay.
And so I've told him, I've absolutely talked to him and told him he needs to not stop the debate. You're right about the nature of the intervention and he shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
But he's also right that it's his decision about what is persuasive to him in that context.
Or what is racist?
Or what is racist in that context. No one really gets to explain to someone else, like,
Yeah.
This isn't racist.
you are misunderstanding, this can't possibly be racist.
Okay.
That's not a thing that really works.
Yeah. So.
So I get where you're coming
Yeah.
from, and
I
I
understand that,
totally wish that he had not intervened in that situation and said, stop the debate, I'm walking out.
Okay.
But there was no way from talking to him that you were going to convince him that what had happened in that debate was persuasive to him in a way that didn't make him feel like you were defending a racist position.
Right. Well, he hadn't given us much in his paradigm. Just don't be racist. Like, I don't think what we ran was racist.
No.
So,
Well,
but
but he did.
so
Yeah, we didn't-
So
we
that-
didn't know
How
that.
were you supposed
Yeah.
to
There wasn't
tell
a
what
lot
was
of
considered
definition of what
racist?
was. But, I mean,
Yeah, I think the lesson there to learn is be more cautious about it than you were.
Okay.
Like, how do you know? You don't.
Well, and
so
you
if
do
you want
know.
to, if you want to safeguard
cautious.
yourself
Yeah.
in regards to that, then you really got to shy away from things that you think someone might interpret that way or think that they might be predisposed to think that way. People have bias.
And you
Like-
know, with
Well-
your
well,
evidence,
obviously-
you know
Yeah.
with your sources
Well, so-
that people think they're
A question,
racist.
since you're like a director, so
Yeah.
your opinion has ground on this.
Yeah.
Like a question of like, how, to what degree do judges have jurisdiction? Like, if can they just say, I personally don't buy your argument, even
Yeah.
though they didn't argue it?
I mean, look, in an ideal world, would you love it that every judge walked in and it was completely blank slate and it's just like, you said this, they didn't respond,
Well,
who am I voting
Well, it's not a
for?
question of bias, but like letting their bias interfere. Like if we,
They will. Every judge does it.
Well, no, I'm
every
not saying that,
round.
like,
they might not write that
Yeah,
down.
well, like for example, like if I say the sky's green and they don't contest it, and the judge is like, I just don't buy that, even though they didn't defend it. Like the way I perceive debate is if you say a statement, it's presumed true until disproven.
That is a philosophy on debate, that silence is consent. That is not the only philosophy on debate. There are a lot of people for whom you actually have the burden of proof to demonstrate the thing that you have said is in fact true. And by true, I don't just mean like factually true. I mean,
Right.
you have the burden to kind of demonstrate that the value presumption that underlies the claim you've made is a value assumption we should make, and that it's a good one.
Okay.
And so, yeah, some judges are absolutely going to be like, you made this claim, it wasn't really refuted, I'm going to vote on it. And some other judges are going to say, you made this claim, but no, that doesn't rise to the level of proof.
Okay. So
yeah, it's different
I'm not talking about like
philosophies.
overruling it, but like
No.
this is more just like a dialogue I'm having with you.
No, I totally
So like in a scenario like where a debate space is very biased, like almost to a point where like it's an echo chamber to a sense, like how does that type of philosophy where like you have to persuade me, even though me as the collective judge, we just don't listen to anything that's to the right of the radical left. Like how is that a good model for free speech and not having echo chambers?
It might not be, but that's the nature of all communities. And trying to like fit in or find the ones where you do fit in is important and an important skill to learn. The implication of that is that not all of them are navigable by all ideologies.
Right.
No, and that's the thing I was getting at before, the question of what is the value that undergirds this, or what is the ideology that undergirds this. If you really want to have a conversation about the nature of, I looked at some of the tags for your cards, for instance.
Yeah.
If you want to get at the nature of what is ideology and what is identity politics, then you have to have an honest conversation with the judge about, look, we clearly are going to have a different opinion about what identity politics is and what ideology we should have in relationship to it. But here's why you should question the assumptions that folks have on the left about the way identity politics works. So you have to make it literally about the level of value, the level of ideology, and why that thing is doing what you say. You got to start with the conversation about what is an echo chamber, and what are those values that are just kind of bounced around and repeated in sort of vapid ways in policy.
Okay, so say we do that, like we spend 5 minutes on like just like an overview explaining all this stuff.
Maybe.
And the moment he hears Shapiro or Peterson, he just he votes like in the 1AC. Is that fine?
And that's what he's talking about. You have to start from the premise that some arguments are not going to navigate the community well and are going to off-put people in that way. And if you are not positioned well to adapt to folks that might view it that way, then you're sort of setting yourself up for a real tough challenge.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I obviously know that almost everyone disagrees with this.
Sure.
It's just like I don't like the idea of echo chambers. Like if I think something's true, I'm going to argue it.
Yeah, but other people just as equally don't like the idea of playing devil's advocate. Like, why the hell is anyone advocating for the devil?
Right. Okay. Well, so
We need to
I
let
guess-
these guys do their stuff.
okay.
No, I get where you're coming from.
Can I just get your personal opinion on like the echo chambers status of debate and what you think about it? If it's there, if you should intervene or make an effort to kind of like make debate more open.
That sounds
to
like 3-ish questions to me.
You can.
I think that it's actually really new territory that debate is navigating, and we're going to have to come up with new ways to think about judging intervention and the role that biases play in evaluation. I think it was easier before identity politics was actually a question in debate, but now that it is a question, we got to question everything.
Yeah, and
including your stance on intervention.
It's not that identity politics wasn't a thing before.
But now it's a question.
It's that now that folks on the left are using identity politics against the fundamental identity politics of whiteness, now all of a sudden everything is identity politics.
Okay.
And so it fundamentally changes questions about what is authentic and what is ideology and how is it tied to who we are. And those are questions the debate community is having a very difficult time figuring out. The academic literature on identity has sort of obliterated the notion of you must be an authentic voice to speak for something. Debate is having a very hard time even getting past that, and that's like 20, 30 years old. So yeah, we're in a rough spot where people are having a rough time figuring out, like, how do I sit in a debate where people are tying claims about what is valuable and who should win to the nature of who they are? Because how am I supposed to say no to that team and literally tell them that the thing they've said about themselves is not valuable? But by the same token, if everybody's going to make arguments about their identity, what does that say about the team that ties their arguments to their identity and loses all their debates? Are we literally saying that team is now not valuable as humans because they couldn't win a debate by staking it on their identity?
Right, okay.
I mean, these are fundamental issues that debate has not really figured out, and we're really slow to do it.
So is there any call to action?
For what?
Just how to cope with all of this? Like
How
if
do we cope
want
with
to
all
change
this?
something?
I mean, it's a good question. We need to be addressing a lot more bases of literature to do it, that's for sure.
Okay.
You have any questions, Weston? Okay,
No, I'm good.
All right, cool.
Thank you for your time.
Yes, of course.